You're listening to the Wedding Biz Network, the voice of the creative entrepreneur. Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner, host of The Wedding Biz, in which I conduct in-depth and revealing interviews of icons and those who I feel are the next generation icons of the weddings and event industry. And this is all to provide you with education and inspiration. And I have a special message before I introduce today's guest. The Wedding Biz has been such a passion of mine for over 3 years, and I've been just so driven to support this industry in any way I can and to help your growth in it by bringing you insights from our industry leaders. However, it does come at a cost. And so to keep from charging a membership fee, the best way I believe to keep maximizing the potential of the show and continue bringing you this great content is to ask you to become a patron. Now, for starting as little as $6 a month or 75 cents an episode, you can now lend support to not only help you stay engaged with our industry's thought leaders, but also to expand on the kinds of content that The Wedding Biz delivers. So if you go to theweddingbiz.com, you'll see a button, Become a Patron, and that's where you can sign up. And I would really appreciate that. And so now I want to mention that if you missed last week's episode, it was Yara Estefan, an extremely talented planner designer out of Beirut, Lebanon. Really wonderful conversation. She's done some amazing work out there. And now today's guest is Zuzu Birkhof, a photographer working out of Berlin. She's worked many years in fashion and commercial photography until switching to weddings, in which she brings her fashion aesthetic. And she's recently added a new element to her business called the Love Empire, unique shootings for daring brides. Very interesting. So enjoy my conversation with Zuzu Birkhof. Zuzu, I know that you are living in Berlin right now, and I like to ask my guests where they're from and where they grew up. From what I understand with you, your answer is going to be you grew up in opera houses. Isn't that right? Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. This is because my parents are both classical musicians, and I spent a lot of my time in opera houses. And but I was born in Germany. My parents are Polish, but I was born in Germany and I grew up in Germany.
And your mother, I believe your mother was a concert pianist and your father was an opera singer, right? That's why they were performing in opera houses?
Exactly, yeah.
So where did you travel? Like basically all over Europe or even further?
No, it was more across Germany. It was in Bavaria, a lot of opera houses in Bavaria, and I think we have a lot of opera houses in Germany, so we don't need to, look for other opera houses across Europe. But it was a lot of Bavaria, and then we finally landed in northern Germany, and then we stayed there. Yeah.
But I can't imagine. I mean, did you literally? Was it every couple of months or every couple of years? I mean, what was it like as a child for you?
I think it was kind of normal to me because my parents were changing the cities every year. And for me, it was just kind of, I don't know, it was normal to me. It sounds a little bit crazy because I have 2 kids and I think I wouldn't do this to them because I would be thinking, okay, maybe this is super stressful for them or something like that. But it wasn't. It kind of made me who I am. And I'm a really restless person, maybe because of this fact that we were, changing cities all the time. So I love to travel. And I think maybe this comes from this fact. Yeah.
It's interesting. I actually learned something about myself from reading about you because when I was young, my father was a professor of anthropology and we moved every 2 years until I was 12 years old. Every 2 years. I mean, he was getting his graduate degree and then he was getting his PhD. He started to teach. I mean, all these different things. And I also have this kind of a restless spirit and this adventurous spirit. And honest to God, at my age, after all this time, when I heard you talk about how you think maybe you've got this restless spirit and this adventurous spirit because of the moving, it made me realize maybe that's what it is about for me too. Just from moving constantly. Like I imagine you too, I had to constantly get used to a new school. I had to get to know new friends. but it was all I knew. So I was happy. It wasn't a problem for me. And it makes me, again, it gives me, I think, this kind of sense of adventure and loving to explore new places and loving to meet new people. I mean, does that sound familiar to you too?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is exactly what it feels to me. And I think that this is it's a treasure. I think it's something like that. I'm really happy that it was that way. It's not that I'm like, ooh, I had a bad childhood or something like that. I'm really thankful for this. Yeah.
Well, and then, all right. So when you were a kid, I mean, was there any interest in photography for you at the time? Like, when did you get the passion for the first time for that?
Yeah, I think the passion was not photography because I wasn't really interested in photography, to be honest. But I was standing on stage next to my dad during opera because I was in the choir for children, and I was looking at a dancer, and he was doing dozens of periods, and I thought, Jesus, when I could freeze this moment because it's so beautiful, this is something that really sticked in my head, and I was fascinated by this fragility of a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is something I always wanted to do, like freeze moments.
Wow, that's so beautiful the way you're talking about. Like, roughly how old were you? Do you remember?
I think maybe 9.
Wow. So did you get a camera? I mean, how did that go? When did you get your first camera?
I got my first camera with when I was, I think, 18 or 19, so pretty late. And I started to shoot people, like, friends and, things at a party, or I don't know, basically people, like, I don't know, my boyfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to be a photographer. But when I was 22, I think my grandfather, who was a really important person to me, said, you know what, you should study photography. Because I was a little bit lost in this time, and I didn't know what to do. And he said this to me one day, and this was the moment I prepared something like a portfolio for a film academy in Warsaw, and I went there for the test, or how do you call it? Like when you try to,
yeah, like an audition.
Yeah, like an audition, and and then I got the place,
Wow, this is because your grandfather encouraged you. That is so sweet.
Yeah, that was really sweet. He really knew me very well, and he was a huge influencer of my life.
Yeah. And then when you came out of the film academy, I believe you became an assistant for a really well-known photographer. Is that right? Is it Olaf Heine? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, it's correct. Olaf Heine. Yeah, he is a big celebrity photographer here in Germany. He's photographing a lot of famous people, celebrities across Germany, but also, of course, the US and, big stars. And, I was the first girl who was able to assist him.
Uh-huh.
And because before me, he only had men. And this was pretty crazy because he was asking me a few times, like, Zuzu, but you have to carry really, really, heavy things. And I was like, I'm okay with that. Yeah, I can do it. But he was like, are you really sure? And I was like, yes, I'm really sure. I want to do this. I want to do this. So, I did this assistant year, which was very important to me because when you study photography, it's a lot of theory and a lot of history, art history, a lot of things that are not really useful when you want to get a job. I mean, you learn a lot of history of art and of lighting, but it's not when you want to get a job. How do you do it? You study photography for 4 or 5 years, and then you're ready, and then you're like, okay, and now what's happening now? So this was really important for me.
Well, so what happened after that? I mean, did you get a job working for someone else or some other company, or did you just start working freelance on your own?
I started working freelance, but I started working as a producer first because I wanted to, collect knowledge more behind the scenes because I already knew how to capture moments, how to use a camera. I knew all that stuff, but I wanted to, I wanted to be the producer of it all. I wanted to be the guy who was directing the whole production or the girl. And I think this was really important for me to make this decision that I won't start as a photographer right away, but to produce, things, to book artists, to book a hair and makeup artist, to choose the hair and makeup artist, this one and not that one, and to talk to all these people who have to do with the production, like with a location manager, with the lighting team, with all these people. And so I started to work as a producer.
And from what I understand, is this the time when you started to shoot for, GQ and Marie Claire and Glamour and work with celebrities? Is that you started to get into that fairly soon?
Exactly, because after the assistant year at Olaf Heine, it was pretty easy for me to get other jobs with other photographers because they have seen, okay, she worked with this guy, and so I had a great network already. Yeah. So they were booking me right away, and and this is where I started to produce shoots for photographers who were shooting for Vogue, GQ, Marie Claire, Cosmopolitan, and this was the whole thing.
Wow, that's interesting. And from what I understand, you were also, let's see, you worked with some celebrities, Iggie Pop and the band.
I know.
Oh my God. Iggie Pop is so iconic, especially his look,
Yeah, he's super special.
How did that come about? How did you get a chance to shoot him?
It was also my production, so I didn't shoot him, but I was producing this editorial with him. And we had this opportunity to make an editorial for a magazine in Germany. And we were given about 7 minutes, I think, from the tour manager to shoot Iggy after a concert. Yeah, it was pretty crazy because we were preparing everything for hours, and we were waiting there for hours. And the tour manager said he will arrive at 10 p.m. And it was crazy because he arrived earlier, and there was a big hustle, and and he was super drunk.
Oh no!
May I say this?
Yeah, not surprised. No, everybody knows.
He was really, but he was super kind. It was really an experience. It was really funny and special.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, how then did you make the switch into shooting weddings? How did you do that?
It was in 2015, and I think I was pretty tired of the fashion and commercial industry. And I wanted to start something new. I had the feeling that I needed change for my career and for myself as a woman and as a person. And I was, I just stopped working, and I did nothing for a time, like for 6 months, I think. I was just sitting around and waiting till something comes to me. I was like, where is my inspiration? But, nothing happened. And then my husband said to me, why don't you do weddings? And I was like, no way. I will never shoot weddings.
Yeah.
And, but then I was a little bit bored, and I built a website, and suddenly it worked out. It was, people started to book me, and I think I had this different look or different approach because I didn't know anything about weddings, to be honest. It was a total new area for me, and I think this is what was maybe fresh for the people, that it was so new or looked different, or I don't know.
Do you think you can describe it like what your style is in terms of how was it different? I mean, I understand. I want to say I understand what you're saying. I have a music company, and when I first I had bands when I was a teenager and all of that, and then when I had moved to Washington D.C. for a job, and I kind of like you. Eventually, I was real hesitant, and then I decided just to start performing again. Let me put together a band for weddings, and everyone in town was telling me that we were completely different because I was not thinking weddings. I was thinking, like all the celebrity acts, the concerts that I had seen. And so my approach to it was so different. The way we dressed, the way we performed on stage, the way we presented ourselves. Yes, it was a wedding, but we had this different style. I'm kind of imagining for you bringing that fashion sense. It must have given you a different perspective.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it was like an industry that felt for me a little bit, how do I say it, like not really professional, because, I came from this super high-end professional world where, with this, everything is working, absolutely on time, and the productions are super perfect. Like, I don't know. And I've seen these images and I was a little bit like, okay, maybe we can bring something more fashionable into the pictures. And I think this was my first idea. So I think this is why I'm calling my images fashion inspired, or fashion inspired photography, wedding photography. Because I come from this world and I wanted to bring these elements into this wedding world. And I think from the beginning, my biggest ambition was to be, colorful, playful, innovative, feminine, and fashionable, just fashion inspired.
Yeah, well, also, now I'm starting to understand better because I read, I think it might have been in your website, that you describe yourself as being more of this structured photographer who loves, as you said, you love concepts and schedules. And this is interesting to me, Zuzu, is that you see the final picture long before you're pushing the button. And I don't think this is like a typical photographer who, can imagine and takes it, but rather, again, you're coming at it with this other experience and structure. Can you help me to better understand that? I think I get it, but to better understand, you see the final picture long before, and so you're more structured going into it. What does that mean?
Exactly. I think it's easier for me because this is the way I used to work for many, many years, that I plan something and then I build a setup and then I push the button and then it's ready.
Yeah.
So this is the way I prefer to work. And I think, to be honest, this is my best me as a photographer.
Yeah.
I think this is something I can do very well. And I think and I think this is something I like the most about it, that you can you can build a concept, you can build a mood board, and then you can work towards this goal to achieve these images. Of course, wedding photography is completely the opposite. So you are, on a wedding and you have to shoot super, spontaneously. This is not really something I cannot do. But the whole time I was thinking, okay, how can I bring the other element, this, conceptual element into my work?
Do you want to hear behind-the-scenes stories of some of the most influential music industry pros around? Check out my other podcast, The Music Makers. You can find the show on your cell phone's podcast app or at themusicmakers.com. Again, that's The Music Makers. You also mentioned a mood board, which is really interesting. Can you give me an example maybe of a story or two, or describe what your process is like from when you meet a client, so that I can better understand how it is that you do this ahead of time, the mood board, the structure? Because that is, from what I think that's different. That's unusual.
Yeah, well, I cannot really do this when we have a wedding, right? Because this is something really spontaneous, and it really depends on the schedule of the wedding, and I cannot really have a big influence in that. The only influence I can have, and I always try to do it, is to develop for every client a single look. This is what we are doing here and with my team. I think, of course, we have a standard look, a base.
Okay.
And then we adjust this look to the client. If you, for example, if the flower concept, for example, is pink and yellow, then it doesn't really make sense to desaturate pink and yellow, for example. So we push these colors and maybe desaturate other colors, something like that. And this is something we can do, which is more individual. But when we are talking about concepts, then it's more my new project I brought to life this year.
Before we get to that, so are you finding out ahead of time, like from the planner, what the flowers are, what the colors are going to be? Are you getting this kind of information ahead of time, or is it when you show up and then you make those determinations?
I can make it after the wedding because I have seen this, I've seen the wedding and I've been there and I felt the atmosphere. So I think this is something that comes with the post-production, and I do not necessarily need these information before the wedding, but we definitely sit down after the wedding and talk about the look, what look is the best for this wedding, because I'm not really a big fan of putting, one look for over all weddings, if you know what I mean. I think this has to be more individual for the client. When you are getting married, for example, in Spain, then it's really important to push orange and warm colors.
Oh.
And if you are getting married in Lake Como, I think that it's better when you push blue and green because of the garden and the lake and all these things. And this is something that definitely comes with our post-production, that we push these things or not.
I see. See, now that's really, I'm not, I'm kind of a layman when it comes to photography, but that's really interesting to me what you just said about the colors, like if it's Spain versus the colors of Lake Como. So this project that you've put together called The Live Empire, unique shooting for daring brides. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, it's a completely new category of service for brides. And it really came from my observation when I was shooting weddings. So, when you have this knowledge of these big shoots, like this fashion shoots or high-end shoots or editorial shoots for magazines, and you are shooting a wedding and you see the dress and, and the bride, how beautiful she looks and all these things, then you look at her and you realize that you really do not have the time to shoot her. You technically and creatively could.
Okay.
It makes you crazy, or it made me crazy for a long time. And in 2018, I think I had this idea to shoot the brides like on a different day, like in a real high-end fashion editorial style look or something like this. And I think this was the moment when the idea was born. So I think this is just a new service. This has nothing to do with the wedding.
I see. So but is it just for brides or for anybody? You're doing this for anybody?
Well, it's for brides because I'm working in the wedding industry. I think it wouldn't make sense to, in this context, it wouldn't make sense to say that I'm doing this for anyone, because I definitely arrived in the wedding industry and I don't want to leave the wedding industry anymore. I'm super happy here. So, usually, private people do not have this access to high-end professionals from the fashion industry because of the artists like hair and makeup, stylists, and also the lighting. We cannot light the way we light when we do a wedding. It's very complex. We are coming with a light truck. We are building up a huge setting. It's not possible to shoot things like that on a wedding day because of, the bride is nervous, she's excited, you have a completely different, priority on this day. Also, the post-production is super, super, different from the wedding post-production because it's more, you retouch one picture in a day and you retouch a wedding picture in, let's say, 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah,
this is a huge difference from the quality because, of course, you shoot a lot of more images. I mean, I would retouch a wedding for a year if I would do the same with a wedding. So this is really something super exclusive and very individual because we want to also, create concepts for these brides. We want to offer them, a lot of possibilities, a lot of locations. We are already cooperating with great locations in Italy, in Spain, in Germany, in France. We are trying to do something really exclusive, super unique, just for the woman, to value this moment more,
Do you travel with some of them just for the photo shoot? I mean, or is it still local to where they live?
No, I think it really depends on what the client wants. Everything is possible. I mean, we can shoot, for example, 2 days before the wedding at the venue, or we can shoot 4 months before the wedding in Italy, or we can shoot 2 weeks after the wedding if the bride is, for example, from the Middle East and, does believe that it's maybe not that good to wear the dress before the wedding or stuff like that.
Right, like they're superstitious is, I guess, is what.
Superstitious, yeah. Exactly.
Well, this, what I'm also thinking is that when you do these shoots 2 days or 4 months before a wedding, you now have connected with the bride so much, right? They've seen your work that now when you're at the wedding, I imagine that they can be more vulnerable in front of you and they're probably more comfortable. I mean, it seems to me there's also that advantage as well.
This is a good aspect. I've never thought about this. To be honest, this is great. I think this, absolutely true because we already have this experience. We are, of course, more like maybe even friends or something at the wedding. But I think also that, there's a lot of pressure to the bride to get the right pictures on this one day. A lot of things come together,
Yeah.
It's like, okay, the family is there. They have to be perfectly entertained. And my husband was, I don't know, sometimes at the least point, or how do you say, like sometimes it seems to me that it's like the family, the location, the food, the drinks, and then the husband. But, I think there are a lot of things that are super stressful for a woman on a day like this. And
so she can relax a little bit more knowing she got the shots.
Exactly. I think this is something that makes you breathe because you can't just let go because, you already have your images and you are, of course, you will get other images too, but I think you will know that you have already the perfect pictures you always wanted. Of course, this is something that really makes you feel better. I think it would me feel better.
Yeah, I imagine so. So how has COVID, the pandemic, how has this affected your business? Of course, I know it's affecting all of us, hugely. But I don't know if it was when we were communicating before this interview, you said something about it's giving you the time to further develop this project.
Well, I had this idea in 2018, so it's 2 years ago. And, I had this idea and I was like, okay, yeah, that could work. But, I put it on my to-do list and it disappeared.
Yeah. So, well, we all go through that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think now, during COVID, we have the time to go through these to-do lists and to see, how we can entertain ourselves a little bit, and or get things done. And, I found it. I found this idea, I think, position, 248 or something. And I was like, oh, hey, Zuzu, you had this idea. So maybe let's do it. yeah.
So what is it? I mean, like now during the pandemic, what exactly are you doing to work on it? Is it more the marketing of it, or what is it that you're?
Yeah, exactly. I think we have just finished the website, which was it took me about 4 months, to be honest, because I hired a copywriter for this, and then we had to translate this, and then we had to build the website. And now I'm starting to connect with planners.
Oh, so that they're becoming aware of what you do.
Yeah, exactly. This is what I'm doing right now.
I see. So Zuzu, before we wrap up the interview, is there any particular type of client who is most attracted to this new service that you're doing, that you're dealing with, or is it just anyone?
It's not just anyone, because as the subline already says, is it's for daring brides, which means that
right.
which I think that my brides are, they are really brave. They are, of course, they are elegant and sophisticated, but they are at the same time, extravagant, and they are really individual and curious and brave and well educated and strong and successful. And I think that this is like my typical bride in any way, also for a wedding, because I think my look is pretty colorful and joyful and full of power, and is not, other looks are more maybe like pastel or something like this.
Yeah.
And my brides are not this classy. They are more
edge. They have an edge. They have an edge to
Yeah.
them. More powerful, self-empowered. That kind of a. Yeah, I love that.
Exactly. Like they love fashion. They love colors. They are.
Yeah.
It's a certain kind of woman.
Well, and in the show notes, we'll be sure to have photos. I want to definitely get some photos of the service that you've already done. Well, Zuzu, I appreciate this. This has been really interesting. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Zuzu Birkhof. Check out her websites. She's got two. One of them is zuzubirkhof.com. That's ZUZUBIRKHOF.com. Also, the-love-empire.com. Again, the-love-empire.com. You can find all of this in the show notes. And her social media handle is at Zuzu Birkhof. Again, you can find it in the show notes at our website of theweddingbiz.com. And next week on Monday, I've got a very exciting guest I've been looking forward to. Her name is Joy Proctor. I'm sure a lot of you already know about her. She is a wedding and event designer who works worldwide, and she has some very interesting other aspects to her business that's going to be really good to hear about as well. And so we'll catch you next week on The Wedding Biz.